Deciding today who to send to the Senate. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, and here today, Harris Faulkner, the host of Kennedy on Fox Business. Kennedy, former deputy spokesperson for the State Department, Marie Harf, and today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Fox News political analyst and co-host of The Five, Juan Williams, and he is outnumbered. And I go through that quickly because the president is about to sign that bill. He could be making comments, which would be of particular interest for many reasons that we just stated. So we'll be listening for that to begin. John Kelly just entered the room. Welcome, Juan.
Good to be with you as the cold weather approaches.
It's here. Hi.
I know you're ready.
All right, guys. Well, it is an exciting day. Things are changing quickly. Polls are open in Alabama after months of campaigning and reports of sexual misconduct that rocked the state. It's now up to the voters to decide who fills the Senate seat that Attorney General Jeff Sessions left vacant. We just got video moments ago of Roy Moore arriving on horseback to his polling place. Earlier, Democrat Doug Jones cast his ballot. The contest comes with a lot of drama and very high political stakes. A Jones victory would cut the Republican Senate majority to 51 to 49 and give Democrats a boost in their efforts to take control in 2018. On the eve of today's vote, Moore and Jones took parting shots at each other in competing rallies.
The differences between my opponent and me are vast.
It is time that we put our decency, our state, before political party.
He thinks I'm a bigot. He thinks that because I favor traditional marriage ordained of God, that that's the wrong position. The people of Alabama don't believe that.
I think it's time that we say no more to putting people down, that we say no more to treating people as second-class citizens. We say no more to discriminating against those that are the least fortunate among us. It's just time, folks, that we say no more.
Let's go to Jonathan Siri, live from Montgomery, Alabama. Jonathan, a lot happening at this moment. It's going to be a long day.
That's right. It is a long day, but both candidates have already cast their ballots. Sandra, you were referencing that new video of Roy Moore arriving at his polling site on horseback. This is his tradition at election time. He did this in Gallant, Alabama, and then in the northern part of the state, suburban Birmingham, Democrat Doug Jones cast his ballot. However, he arrived on foot.
This is an important time in Alabama's history, and we feel very confident of where we are and how this is going to turn out. But more importantly, we feel so good about what we've done and what we've said to the people of Alabama and to people of the United States.
Roy Moore held a Drain the Swamp rally in southeast Alabama, where he was joined by Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert, former Milwaukee Sheriff David Clark, and former White House Chief Strategist Steve Bannon.
It's an up or down vote tomorrow. Right? Between the Trump miracle and the nullification project.
Doug Jones did some counter-programming to answer Moore's rally. He brought in former NBA star and Alabama native Charles Barkley.
I mean, listen, I love Alabama, but at some point we got to draw a line in the sand. So we're not a bunch of damn idiots. And people are looking at us like, they're actually thinking about voting this guy.
Let's go straight to the president. He is set to sign a bill today, potentially clearing the way for a massive increase in military spending. He's speaking now. Let's listen.
Historic legislation demonstrates our unwavering commitment to our men and women in uniform, the greatest fighting force in the history of the world, and we're making it a lot better than even that. Before we begin, I want to address the terrorist attack that took place yesterday in New York City and to praise the first responders, local police, and federal law enforcement for their quick action. They did an incredible job. There have now been 2 terrorist attacks in New York City in recent weeks carried out by foreign nationals here on green cards. The first attacker came through the visa lottery, and the second through chain migration. We're going to end both of them. The lottery system and chain migration. We're going to end them fast. Congress must get involved immediately, and they are involved immediately, and I can tell you we have tremendous support. They will be ended. These attacks underscore the dangers we face from around the globe. The National Defense Authorization Act could not come at a more opportune or important time. This legislation represents a momentous step toward rebuilding our military and securing the future for our children. I applaud the work of the members of both parties who came together to pass the National Defense Authorization Act, which passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, something that sounds very nice to my ears. I especially want to thank Chairman Thornberry, who is here with us today, for his tireless efforts. Thank you, man. Thank you. It was a great job. Fantastic job. In recent years, our military has undergone a series of deep budget cuts that have severely impacted our readiness, shrunk our capabilities, and placed substantial burdens on our warfighters. And great warfighters they are. History teaches us that when you weaken your defenses, you invite aggression. The best way to prevent conflict or of any kind is to be prepared and really be prepared. Only when the good are strong will peace prevail. Today, with the signing of this defense bill, we accelerate the process of fully restoring America's military might. I also want to thank Senator John McCain for the work he's done on this bill. He has fought very, very hard to make it just the way he wants it and that we all want it. This legislation will enhance our readiness, expand our modernize our forces, and help provide our service members with the tools that they need to fight and to win. We will fight and win, but hopefully with this we won't have to fight, because people will not be wanting to fight with us. It authorizes funding for our continued campaign to obliterate ISIS. As you know, we've won in Syria, we've won in Iraq, but they spread to other areas, and we're getting them as fast as they spread. We've had more success with ISIS in the last 8 months than the entire previous administration has had during its entire term. It approves missile defense capabilities as we continue our campaign to create maximum pressure on the vile dictatorship in North Korea. We're working very diligently on that, building up forces. We'll see how it all turns out. It's a very bad situation, a situation that should have been handled long ago by other administrations. It upgrades our ground combat vehicles, allows for the purchase of new joint strike fighter aircraft, and paves the way for beautiful new Virginia-class submarines, the finest in the world. Finally, the defense bill authorizes major investments in our military's greatest weapon of all, its warriors. The NDAA increases the size of the American Armed Forces for the first time in 7 years, and it provides our military service members with their largest pay increase in 8 years. Now Congress must finish the job by eliminating the defense sequester and passing a clean appropriations bill. I think it's going to happen. We need our military. It's got to be perfecto. At this time of grave global threats, I urge Democrats in Congress to drop their shutdown threats and to send clean funding and a clean funding bill to my desk that fully funds our great military. Protecting our country should always be a bipartisan issue, just like today's legislation. We must work across party lines to give our heroic troops the equipment, resources, and support that they have earned 1,000 times over. Together, we will send a clear message to our allies and a firm warning to our enemies and adversaries. America is strong, proud, determined, and ready. And I might add, when we're completed, and it won't be that long, we will be stronger than ever before, by a lot. So thank you to all of our friends in Congress, and we do appreciate the bipartisan support. And we appreciate your hard work on this historic defense authorization. And thank you, most of all, to our brave warriors for standing watch over our country, our families, and our freedom. Brand new, beautiful equipment is on its way, the best you've ever had by far. We make the best in the world, and you're going to have it. God bless you, God bless our military, and God bless America. Thank you very much. Thank you. I won't be showing all of this to everybody, believe it or not. That's a lot of pages. That is a lot of pages.
There you have it. The president signing the National Defense Authorization Act. It is a bill that authorizes a major hike in military spending and exceeds the $54 billion defense budget increase requested by Trump for 2018. Marie Harf is on the couch with us right now. What does all this mean? What did the president just sign, and what happens from here?
Well, he basically signed an intention to set spending at a certain level, but we won't know the actual numbers until we get a budget through the appropriations process, which we'll see in the coming days and weeks. As you said, this is way above the cap that Republicans and Democrats had talked about. And so I think this will be a point of contention going forward. Nobody wants to cut defense spending, but we have to have a way to pay for it. And so far, we haven't seen details about that. This will continue to play out, I think, over the coming weeks.
All right. Meanwhile, we've got a major election happening tonight. And Juan Williams is on the couch. This Alabama Senate, special Senate election happening tonight. Turnout is going to be key. And there's, not a decisive indication where this race is going, Juan.
No,
a lot of uncertainty.
I think there's been lots of turmoil in the last few days. We have a Fox News poll that had Doug Jones, the Democrat, up by 10. But then there are other polls that have more up. And so it looks like it's quite fluid. And I think the key point here, and you saw this over the weekend in terms of the robocalls from President Trump, President Obama, Joe Biden, the presence last night, as we saw on the screen, of Charles Barkley, the Auburn basketball All-American and star in the NBA, is that who gets their folks to the polls is going to be determinative. Who gets their people out? Now, right now, I think this is almost more of a conversation among Republicans than Republicans versus Democrats. You have Republicans, especially people like Senator Shelby, who said, I can't vote for Roy Moore, and the establishment, the business establishment in the state, yes, the senior senator from Alabama, and the business establishment in the state saying it wouldn't be good for business to attract manufacturing and work if we put someone like Moore in office.
Can we talk just a second more about your question, Sandra, in terms of voter intensity? The reports are that this on the ground for election officials is looking more like a presidential election day in terms of just how much they've seen early on with voter intensity and people coming out to the polls. They still have several hours, so we don't know how it will shake out. But it's impossible to know who that benefits. But it speaks to the issue of this is not just a special election, but a specially attended to election. People are attentive about it.
That's right. And I think, normally you would have very low voter turnout in these kinds of elections, given all the intense coverage, the unique situation of the race. I think you're going to see much more turnout. There aren't enough registered Democrats to win just on a turnout game. Doug Jones is going to need Republicans to either stay home or cross over. And we have seen people like Senator Shelby. There were other Republicans who've come out and said, I just couldn't do it. I couldn't vote for Roy Moore. That will be the interesting deciding factor, I think, today. And you're right. We do not know who turnout will help.
Who benefits that.
And I think this could go pretty long into the night tonight if I had to guess.
I'd say, it's interesting, Doug, that Shelby said he didn't vote for Doug Jones. He didn't vote for the Democrat.
Right. And that is such a great point. So what we have here is the duality duopoly cartel system. You have two failing parties that no longer serve voters, who give up choices that are, to many people, unfortunately, in Alabama, the lesser of two evils. And that's the choice they feel that they're forced to make. And I think it's fantastic that Richard Shelby wrote in a candidate that he believed in. And vote your conscience. That's okay. Yep. Be a little unorthodox. Think outside the ballot box for a second.
So one of the things that actually is working for Roy Moore in terms of his messaging, you know, irrespective, if you will, of the allegations against him, the sexual misconduct allegations, are his Christian values among those who are being talked to as they come out of voting. Now, you can't do exit polling, you don't do that, but reporters are asking them, and you hear time and time again them pointing to those who voted for him, pointing to his Christian values, and that the rest of the stuff was, I won't even say what one woman said, but I'll just say hooey instead of what she said. And on the ground, all politics are local. Will that play out? We don't know.
What does a Doug Jones victory mean for Trump's agenda?
This is not good either way.
Right.
So that if you have Doug Jones there, I don't know how he'll vote on taxes, because I just don't know. He has not made that clear, Chandra. But what is clear is that he would caucus with the Democrats. And so he would be under pressure and expected to help fulfill a Democratic agenda. And as you know, Democrats have stayed apart from much of Trump's efforts, especially health care and even tax reform.
And Doug Jones is going to walk much more of a party line than Roy Moore will.
Exactly.
And I think Roy Moore, the second he gets to really exercise that very vocal independence, if he is in fact elected today, he will show it, especially to Mitch McConnell.
There you go. That's the key point.
Well, even the latest tweet from the president talked about Roy Moore and how he votes and how he'll be much more in line with the party.
All right, a busy day. A lot more to get to. New York City police charging the alleged terrorist who detonated a homemade bomb inside the city's subway system, New York City's subway system. We will tell you why he reportedly said he did it. Plus, we're learning more about how this immigrant got into the country, why the White House says its proposals would have kept him out, and what the administration is doing now.
As yesterday's New York events showed in the starkest terms, the failures of our immigration system are also a national security issue. The president is exactly right to call attention to these issues.
Just moments ago, authorities announced federal terrorism charges against the suspect behind yesterday's terror attack on the New York City subway system during the morning rush hour. Authorities are saying that Bangladeshi national was inspired by the Islamic State savages. And yesterday, New York police raided the apartments of the suspect and his family. Rick Leventhal is on the story for us at New York City's Port Authority. Rick?
And Harris, we're learning more from the criminal complaint filed by the U.S. Attorney's Office late this morning. Authorities say that Akayed Ullah admitted building the pipe bomb and intentionally detonating it. He said he did it, according to authorities, for the Islamic State. The complaint says he built the pipe bomb in his Brooklyn apartment. Law enforcement sources say he gathered at least some of the materials from job sites where he worked as an electrician. The bomb was filled with explosive material and metal screws and used Christmas tree lights, wires, and a 9-volt battery for detonation. And Ullah allegedly used zip ties to attach it to his body. The complaint says Ullah's radicalization began at least 3 years ago, in 2014, when he viewed pro-ISIS materials online, and he began researching how to build IEDs on the internet about 1 year ago. We have also learned yesterday morning he posted on his Facebook account a message to the president, which I hope you can hear over the sirens behind me. That message read, "Trump, you failed to protect your nation." Authorities say Ullah acted alone and was not on the radar of the FBI or the NYPD.
You've got people who are consumers of this propaganda, and these plots unfold where they're not necessarily working with anybody else or confiding in anybody else, and that's something we're still looking at here, where the conspiracy is within the confines of their own mind, and that's a very hard place to get to.
Ullah now faces 5 federal charges, including material support to a foreign terrorist organization, use of weapons of mass destruction, bombing a place of public use, destruction of property by means of explosion, and use of a destructive device during a crime of violence. The investigation into Ullah's background continues, Harris, and so does the heightened security here in New York City.
Rick, we heard your every word. We were hanging on them. And just to quote that suspect again, Trump, you failed to protect our nation. Is that what he said?
Trump, you failed to protect our nation. He posted that on Facebook, according to authorities, yesterday morning on his way here to the Port Authority to set off his pipe bomb.
And actually, we were very protected yesterday, talking about police and their quick action. Rick Leventhal, thank you very much. And this just a short time ago as well. Attorney General Jeff Sessions and the new Secretary of the Homeland Security, Kirstjen Nielsen, calling for reform of the U.S. immigration system after the White House said the president's immigration proposals would have kept the accused New York City terrorists and others out of this country.
In just the last 2 months, we've seen 2 terrorist attacks in New York City, carried out by men who were here as a result of failed immigration policies. The diversity lottery, which makes no sense and has never made no sense, and chain migration.
The administration is planning to modify our immigration system to end misguided and outdated visa systems. Instead, we do need to focus on merit-based system that the president has recommended.
And you saw a clapback of sorts from the president just moments ago when he spoke, because he brought this issue up. He said, look, there have been 2 attackers recently. One came into this country through the visa lottery, and the other from yesterday came in through what is called chain migration. He says, we are going to get rid of both of these.
Well, it's interesting to me because I think we all want to protect our country and do everything we can. But in this instance, it looks like the president is politicizing it by saying that somehow immigrants are to blame. And specifically, he's talking about chain migration. But it's not clear that this person...
Wait a minute. How is that politicizing it? He's actually calling what happened what it is, because there is a familial chain in which this young man came in. Correct. And he was able to do that because he was under 21.
Yeah, but it's not a result of chain migration, Harris. What
He's
it's a
just
result
talking about
of...
how he got here.
Well, that's fine. Everybody gets here somehow. But I'm saying
that's part of the problem, isn't it?
This guy was radicalized while here in the United States by internet material.
I don't know that we know that.
I think we know that pretty strongly.
Law enforcement has said that he radicalized here, but he was making several trips back and forth between the United States and Bangladesh.
Again, there's no way to really know that, right?
No, but
there is. That's what they said. That was the statement that they put out. But the point is, guys like this are going back and forth. He had a wife, a newborn baby.
But he wouldn't have been able to do that if he hadn't been in the country in the first place.
Yeah, but that was 7 years ago that he came here.
Yeah, he was under 21.
And it's really easy to look back and say that. But it's interesting because in the Gang of 8 bill, which was certainly flawed, and I don't think that we're in a position
bill is perfect.
grant the sort of blanket amnesty that was, but it would have gotten rid of the diversity visas and chain migration.
So is the president right about this, is the bottom line?
I think the president has more support for the type of immigration reform that he's proposing now that did have bipartisan support back during the Gang of 8 days. This is very different than talking about the travel ban or building a wall. I know people like to lump it into the same conversation.
No, you're right.
But if he can abstract that out, I think there are more people who are in favor of that kind of immigration policy.
That is such a great example to the Gang of 8, because we're talking about a situation where people on both sides of the aisle could agree at this. So how far away have we moved from that?
I mean, that feels like a different planet. Just thinking about
it wasn't all that long ago.
I know, but the Senate has changed since then dramatically. And on this issue, I think Republicans feel emboldened to run to the right because President Trump won. And look, the concept of chain migration, in theory, isn't a bad one. Keeping families together.
Okay.
But wait, so let me finish though.
But they're not talking about breaking up a nuclear family, and that is a misnomer.
What I was going to say is how far that change should go. Should it go to grandparents?
Betty's son's daughter's sister?
And can we keep these programs and vet better? Or should we just say get rid of them?
But Republicans are saying that, as far as I understand it, the nuclear family
President Trump is saying get rid of them altogether.
Okay, but let me just ask you something. I want to ask you this very quickly, though. Okay. If there were chain migration ended for countries that are part of the travel ban, and it wasn't necessarily the travel ban, but if you had countries where you ended that, would you be in favor of that?
Yeah.
Kennedy, you got to get to Capitol Hill with those negotiating skills, because that's a compromise.
If it was proven to be effective, I'm for anything. But the problem here is, what's the alternative? The alternative being suggested is merit-based immigration. Well, you still have to vet people based on merit. And if they come here based on merit and are exposed to this kind of toxic material on the internet, then they're going to radicalize again. That's right. Immigration.
But don't miss the compromise that she just laid down there.
No,
she dropped the mic on
I said
that.
if something works, I'm all for it. But let's not politicize this horrible accident any more than we would politicize guns over what happened.
By the way,
in
the
Vegas.
radicalization happening online is a whole other issue that has to be addressed. Chairman McCall has been very
anywhere.
Has been very clear about that, talking to Google, Facebook, Twitter, something.
We got to hold those people accountable. The Facebook people have all said, "Oh, it's we're just a platform. We're not responsible." Yes, you are.
Absolutely, you guys.
Sandra, what do the big companies say about that? Because you've done many of those interviews.
I don't know that we don't know the depth of their workings with the federal government.
Sure.
I don't even know if they are, if they aren't. Not a lot is being discussed on that, but certainly something more needs to be done because there's so many red flags that exist that they find out after the fact, unfortunately.
All right. High stakes. The race that could impact the balance of power in Washington, D.C. What's at stake as voters go to the polls in Alabama's hotly contested special election? We're watching it minute by minute. And biased justice, another potential black eye for the Justice Department, just days after an anti-Trump FBI agent came under scrutiny. The president's lawyers say this supports their call for a second special counsel. We'll talk about it. Stay close.
Fox News alert on a special election the nation is watching, and it's going on right now in Alabama. The contest between Republican Roy Moore and Democrat Doug Jones comes with plenty of drama, including accusations of sexual misconduct against Moore. He denies everything. The political stakes are high. A Jones victory would cut the Republican Senate majority to 51 to 49. All right, Fox News alert, investigate. The investigators, that's the call from President Trump's legal team, who are now demanding a second special counsel to probe the FBI and Department of Justice officials behind the Russia investigation. This after a stunning revelation in the investigation into the anti-Trump dossier. Fox News confirming that Bruce Orr, the now demoted senior Justice Department official who met with the dossier's creators, Fusion GPS, is married to a woman who worked for Fusion GPS during the 2016 election. And this comes on the heels of another potential conflict of interest. Peter Strzok, one of the leading FBI agents in Robert Mueller's Russia probe, getting the boot after it was discovered that he'd trashed the president in a number of texts. Now, Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow stressing to Fox News that their call for another special counsel has nothing to do with Mueller's investigation or the president's confidence in Mueller. Meantime, when pressed about the calls for a new special counsel, Attorney General Jeff Sessions says he would only recommend one, quote, if the standards for a special counsel are met. I always say, if it's tough for us to keep track of everything that is going on here, imagine for someone who's not actually in our business and trying to follow this at home, Juan. So much is changing on this front. And now the possibility of a second special counsel?
Well, I mean, to me, if you're at home and you're trying to say it's confusing, keep this in mind. I think we have a very sensitive president who feels he's under attack and subject to, not only Michael Flynn, his former national security advisor, pleading guilty, but then requests for bank records and the like. And his response is to punch back. And he is questioning, and all of his advocates in the media, questioning Robert Mueller, questioning the FBI, going after the Justice Department and Justice Department officials, bringing questions about what's going on as if they're engaged in a witch hunt, which is what he wants his supporters to believe.
Which he has said he feels, Marie.
And Juan is exactly right. This is a concerted effort to undermine the credibility of Robert Mueller, who for many, many years, Republicans and Democrats have thought very highly of. So as Americans, I've said this many times and I feel like a broken record, but we should want to get to the bottom of Russian interference in our 2016 election. If there was anyone working with them or helping them, we now know that Russia offered help, that the campaign met with them about help, that people lied about that to the FBI. I don't know where this investigation is going, but you're going to see, as it gets more serious, more attempts on the part of Trump supporters to muddy the waters, to distract from that, and calls for a special counsel, a second one, are exactly that. They're completely
muddying the waters to want there to be fairness, though. I mean, when you look at that anti-Trump dossier, there are equally as many questions about what nefarious moves Democrats might have been making as far up as the FBI.
As many questions?
Or maybe even more. I don't know. I mean, you bring up a good point. We've been asking them for so long that maybe they've tripled in value. I don't know. But my point is that you've got a DNC, you've got a former presidential candidate, and potentially the FBI who would have shelled out cash for a dossier that was being put together by a British spy. I know it sounds like a movie.
No, but
it's not.
We haven't had those questions satisfactorily answered. What was the government doing? Who were they spying on? What information were they using? And I'm sorry, but Mueller is being paid by the government, and he has not defended his position.
There's no evidence he has done anything inappropriate. There's no evidence
That's
that
not
Robert
the point.
Mueller.
I'm talking about equability when you're looking at things from a probe standpoint.
We
is everything being looked at?
We have not had.
But you're drawing an equivalency that is false.
About Christopher Steele. What was his relationship to Fusion GPS? Why was a senior official at the Department of Justice who is married to someone who worked for Fusion GPS, meeting with that organization without disclosing it? And all of those meetings and all of those information certainly affect outcomes here. And as Americans, we deserve answers to why those outcomes were affected and how.
Equally as many questions as I pointed out.
I honestly, we can get answers to those questions, but to put them on the level of whether a winning presidential campaign colluded with Russia to throw our election, I'm sorry,
but
that is a narrative.
No,
that is a narrative.
Evidence of that.
Marie, there's no evidence of that, and this has been going on a very long time.
That is just not true that there's no evidence.
What do you mean by no evidence?
What is the evidence?
There's a ton of evidence. The whole intelligence community is confirmed
that the Trump
Russian
campaign colluded with Russia.
Here, listen what I'm saying.
But that's specifically what Marie
in our
said.
election, and they
that's
are
not
now
what Marie
trying to find out exactly what level of cooperation exists. And what we know is that Trump officials have lied consistently about their contacts with Russians. And look at that FBI agent, Peter Strzok. You guys act like, what's the equivalence here? He was tweeting anti-Trump stuff. Guess what? He was watching a debate. How many of you on this couch weren't tweeting something about what
I don't think that a person
anti-presidential. What are you saying?
You say, I like Donald Trump. I like Hillary Clinton. What a silly thing
to be joking right now.
No, I am not.
You think I do that?
I think tons of people across America would
anybody on this couch.
He could have affected the outcome of not only the Hillary Clinton server investigation, where he was a lead investigator.
It doesn't speak to his integrity, Kennedy.
We've got to leave it there. We've got a lot more to get to. You should just put the camera on me and I will get us out of here. We're waiting to hear from female Democratic lawmakers just one day after nearly 60 of them called on the House Oversight Committee to open an investigation into sexual misconduct allegations against President Trump. What the president is saying in response to all of that, Juan Marie will be friendly at the commercial break.